Canada's cornerman, Callum McGregor.
Hey, this motherfucker from Canada, sick. What they doing in Canada?
I actually really like this spot.
And Jasmine's live for a sub. Cachoeira leaves her neck exposed all the time.
But this fight, I'm telling you, it's a flip of a coin.
That definitely, I think, in some of the handicappers I talked to, has influenced the gambling line.
I'm not really a fan of him at all.
I'm generally always the underdog.
Second round, club and subs.
Best bet of the card. That's the baddest motherfucker on this card.
Tune in to Donttap podcast.
Hey, Donttap podcast. We are back, and I am pretty excited to have sort of a cross podcast scenario. I'm stepping up from behind the sticks on my show, obviously, to be the host as I've been, and we have Slick Montana coming in. Bringing some slick spots, and I like the breakdowns, man. You get pretty in depth with your breakdowns, and usually when you're on a spot, you got to take a look at it. And the thing that people don't realize, even if you're on a spot and you're on an opposing side to somebody who does a big breakdown, you get so much insight, and you can even fade the situation, but you're getting insight in someone's perspective, and they've done some work, and they'll dig up stats and break down things for you. So I definitely do appreciate your time today. And Billy Briz of Pub Sports Radio, as always, co-host of the Donttap podcast. I mean, I guess we got to sort of say it, right? You're pretty much, we're like almost 2 years into this. It's almost like we've been dating, but not officially have called it. So
OG fans, man. I mean, before they had the Darce podcast way back in the day, this is to the Instagram live viewers back in the day. I was the fourth horseman on that show way back in the day before those boys got real close. So it feels like the worlds have collided back around, and nice to do content with Slick again because, man, I haven't done a video with you, Brosco, and Mr. Plus Money before. That was before Mr. Plus Money was Mr. Plus Money. I forget what they used to call him. They used to call him like the Cooler. Him and his dad had that company. Shouts to Mr. Plus. Mr. Plus is a must.
all right, man. And Slick, welcome to the show.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Of course, you already know with my breakdowns, I always like to go in depth. Just for the simple fact, because I love the sport. Like I like to watch damn near every fight if I can on each and every card. And I just love the sport. So just keep on with the breakdowns and let's keep making money.
Yes, sir. Okay. So we are going to take a look at the PFL 7, and there is some obvious spots. There's some Bellator-ish lines, we'll call it, and some lines with a pretty wide, and you can probably parlay them up and probably hit it, even at chalk parlays, 2 to 3 pieces. We're probably going to build one of those at the end of the show. But first, what we're going to do is apply the same rules that we always do to the Donttap podcast. Everybody brings 3 spots. Sometimes our spots will cross section, and then we'll just really dig into a spot heavily. Other times you'll have a really a show where we're just on every different fight, and we'll end up doing almost the full card. So what we'll do is we'll let Slick, you were the special guest. We will let you take it away here. What is your first spot you want to bring in for PFL 7?
Yeah, I mean, this is probably going to be a lot of people's pick of this week, but I really like Dennis Goltsov by KO in this spot. It's a real big opportunity for him to just get back on track. The guy lost to the champion, who is now Renan Ferreira, and I just think he's just one of those types of guys that in any tournament that he competes in this PFL, I believe nobody could beat him if he comes in 100%. Like, this is a guy that has a good all-around skill set, good wrestling base, great power in his hands, and his striking is always an underrated suit because he's getting a lot of KOs, but he's getting a lot of one-punch knockouts like he did against Jorgen De Castro. He's grinding through fights, getting a knockout in the 3rd round against Lyndon Vassell, getting a veteran like Thiago Santos from the UFC out of there in the 1st round. He's just a great all-around guy, man, and I'm just happy to really finally see him get into his all-around game, coming in at 100%. Last year, he was fighting a lot of injuries, fighting through a lot of, PFLs like every 3 months, every 4 months. So he's fighting every 3-4 months, getting through stuff. Nice to see him coming in at 100%. And honestly, I just think Tim Johnson is one of those guys that he's a fun fighter, but he's just not a great fight. He's just not a great martial artist. Like, he's one of those guys that if you see in a bar, he's definitely going to knock somebody out. But Dennis Goltsov in the spot because Tim Johnson, for Dennis Goltsov, he has great fight IQ. I think he gets this fight down to the ground like he did against Santos. He clipped on something good, got the fight down to the ground, and just imploded on some ground and pound. I can see the same situation here. TKO stoppage for Dennis Goltsov, and that'll be my first pick.
Goltsov right now is -425, I believe, at BetOnline or Betway. So I mean, probably a parlay piece in most situations. The prop for KO is definitely there. If you look at it, 5 of the 9 losses for Tim Johnson come via KO. 17 of the 34. Yeah, I mean, and 17 of the 34 wins for Goltsov are via KO, and I definitely could see I mean, club and sub likely not happening. He just goes for the KO. He's got some dirty uppercuts up against the cage. He just beats works the body and just beats you up. So I'll pass it off. I didn't have too much of a take, but I thought those stats were definitely interesting, and I will pass that off to Billy. I think he's a parlay piece. Goltsov it's almost an auto bet by KO if you look at the opponent, and unless there's something really screaming otherwise. So, Billy, take it away.
Yeah, I think we kind of cover the basis. I think with Tim Johnson, we got to talk about how he even got put into this PFL season. His last fight was one of those fights that they put together right before the playoffs, just in case something happens. And Tim Johnson was actually a truck driver in PA. His manager called him and said, "Do you want to fight in the PFL this weekend?" And he said, "What?" And he was like, "I don't know what you want me to say. Like, do you want to fight in the PFL this weekend?" He was like, "Oh, I'm kind of in the middle of a route right now." Yada, yada, yada. Got done his route, drove right down to the fucking PFL arena and went in there and got a first round knockout. They say, you get a first round knockout, you're in the playoffs. And here we are. And it's honestly shocking. He's on a 3-fight win streak because it kind of felt like a little bit. Those last couple of Bellator fights, bro, he was kind of on the way out, man. It felt like he was kind of felt like he was about to put up the gloves. He was not training as frequently. He was doing truck driving business. It seemed like he was doing everything other besides MMA. But as you know, at the heavyweight division, as long as you can lace up the gloves and you can make 265, they'll throw you in a fucking fight, no matter what the organization is. But I think this is the biggest match spot in the card is Dennis Goltsov against Tim Johnson. But in theory, it should be a first round ground and pound knockout for Dennis Goltsov. But I think a little bit of the game plan strategy might be to take him into the deep water, see where Tim Johnson's gas tank is like, and it could be a second round knockout. We'll see what the props open up as, but
Goltsov 1 and 2 maybe.
Yeah, it's probably going to be a Goltsov knockout 1 and 2 at like -155, I would imagine.
Okay, sounds good. I think we're all on the same page, and I think that's going to be a heavy spot for a lot of people this week. Billy, if you want to bring in, you can just jump in and bring in your first sort of spot. Was that one of your plays of the day?
Kind of, sort of, but not really.
Okay, it's all right. Bring one in.
It was one that I was actually going to bring up for when we started talking about parlays. But this is actually going to be the heavyweights and the female division as well, female flyweight division. And this is just a line that I understand it's kind of against a little bit of what the promotion's trying to push and look for. But the Talia Santos versus Liz Carmouche line here, I get it. Talia Santos should be a lot better than Liz Carmouche on paper. Liz Carmouche fought a very close fight in her last fight where she ended up getting a triangle arm bar with like seconds left on the clock and ended up cashing a ticket where she was actually down on the judges' scorecards. But her at +200 versus Talia Santos, I mean, how wrong could you be? How wrong could you fucking be? I'm just going to have to ride it here. Liz Carmouche by round 3 decision here against Talia Santos. Talia Santos has had a good run here in the PFL, but she hasn't really I thought she had a bad draw versus Jenna Bishop, and it was a fight where she was dominating and then she started reverting back into the old Talia Santos, the one that got cut from the UFC. Like, she gave away the third round where I thought I was going to cash the Jenna Bishop ticket. I've been trying to catch a falling knife all season with Talia Santos. While she definitely could be in the championship for the PFL flyweight division, I do think that she could. 260, man. If this was in Bellator and this was like a cross promotional type of thing, I feel like situationally, when you're capping fights, you got to think about it in like a different lens. Not exactly right now, today, but let's say if this was like a couple years ago and they're doing like a cross promotion thing. Would Liz Carmouche be plus 200? It was kind of like the same theory that I had with Jake Hadley, Colin Laffer, last week, different organizations, but kind of like if this was taking place in Cage Warriors 2 years ago, what would the line be? It definitely wouldn't be minus 200, 250, one side or another. So I like a long worded answer of saying I like Liz Carmouche.
And I'll come in with one of my plays of the week, and I think you and I end up being aligned on a lot of spots. And I was like, is there value on Liz Carmouche here? Of course there is. This is a little bit of a level check, and that's one of my things I love to look at is the level check. And I think that Liz Carmouche has been in there with everybody. She's on a 9-fight win streak, even some of those fights where she was sort of maybe losing and pulls out the submission. But it's not like she pulls it out in desperation. She works to it, calculated, and she gets it because she is high-level killer in there, and she does take advantage of girls' gas tanks late in fights. So that sort of is a thing that she does. But she's on a 9-fight win streak. Her last fight was against Valentina Shevchenko that she lost. That's a huge thing. Like there's a talent gap here, and I think a lot of people might be looking at the fact that they're saying size. I hear some cappers already saying size. That Santos will have size in her. It's only 2-inch reach advantage. The size really, I don't think is going to be too much of a difference. Carmouche might be a little bit physically smaller, but I don't think so, man. I she's still a muscular girl. I can't see it. I love to see these girls when they stand off. But the reality is plus 200 is almost a prop play. So if you're going to give me plus 200 on a money line spot on like this is a level check if you ever saw it, in my opinion, although Santos has fought some of the top of the top and Shevchenko as well too. I just think this is a spot where you're going to see essentially Carmouche is going to be able to fight off the grappling, be able to stalemate that potentially. On the feet, she's just as good, and I think she'll be able to get sneaky and get to the back at points as well too. So for me, just give me Liz Carmouche. I think it's a good value spot. Plus 200, you can't go wrong with it, in my opinion. Slick.
Yeah, I'm actually on the same side as you guys, man. I'm actually on Liz Carmouche as well. Like, I understand people saying all this stuff about Tyler Santos, who she fought in the UFC. If people really know about Tyler Santos, she really only lost to some of the best. But that was because she never really was in that top tier, I believe. Like if you look at her wins, Roxanne Modafferi, a girl like maybe Jillian Robertson, you give her props for, but that was like years ago. And then she beat Joanne Wood that can't stuff a takedown for nothing. And she rear naked choked her in the first round. So Molly McCann, like these wins aren't really good wins other than the Jillian Robertson fight. And then when she actually got that first step up in competition against Valentina Shevchenko, she basically neutralized Shevchenko's striking and just held on to her. It's not nothing fancy, nothing that somebody hasn't done to Shevchenko. Like Grasso was able to do that to her. It's not nothing that somebody never did before to Shevchenko. It's just nobody was ever able to exploit it, and Santos was ever able to exploit it. And then she got held against the cage for 2 rounds against Blanchfield, not being able to do nothing. And the one concern about me that in that Jenna Bishop fight is that when you needed to bite down on the mouthpiece and actually have Jenna Bishop respect you, it wasn't happening. Jenna Bishop was just going forward on her, acting like the punches wasn't meaning anything. And if Tyler Santos was just able to reverse positions in a couple of fights, I'm just not too high. She probably would have even won that fight. So I understand people going on Santos because she's from the UFC and stuff like that. But if Liz Carmouche just brings her defensive wrestling boots on and keeps it on the feet, Santos just has that one thing that I really hate about her is that when she gets into that mode that she's tired, she does not move her head at all. She's there to get hit. And we've seen Carmouche in that second, third round. If the fight is standing, she's able to get you out of there. So out of here, Fly. But I'm cool. I'm cool with taking a plus 200 prop on Santos. I'm actually gonna wait because I believe money is gonna come in on. Plus 200 on Carmouche. I'm gonna wait to see if money come in on Santos, and if the money is coming in, I'm gonna just wait till fight night and just bet on Carmouche. Like you said, this could be a level check, and until Santos proves to me that she's up there in the top tier where she wasn't in the UFC, hey man, prove it to me.
Liz Carmouche by decision, man. It just screams it. The way that Jenna Bishop was able to win that third round against Santos in her last fight, if she leaves that back door open, hey, she ain't gonna be up 2 rounds like against Liz Carmouche like she was in her last fight. So it definitely creates. You could see the avenues of where she's opening up the back door for a little bit thinner margins on these judges' scorecards. So it's about catching that right opportunity versus Liz Carmouche, where it's kind of like, yeah, you can make criticisms of her performance in her last fight where she started off slow, but I mean, she's a winner at heart, man. Like Cal said, like you gotta scroll a little bit to see the last time that bitch lost a fight. She wants to get promoted just as much as Talia Santos. And what other feather in her cap would it be than to beat a former UFC fighter? I guess her and the promotion kind of went left with her in the UFC. I've heard it wasn't the best ending of a relationship. She was asking for a lot more money than what Dana wanted to give her.
Yeah, this is just gonna be a dog that I'm gonna be taking in this spot. I understand people are gonna be on the other side. I'm actually gonna look at the Tyrell Fortune money line in this spot, plus 110. I've just was really disappointed in Sergey's last fight against Blagoy Ivanov. Like Blagoy Ivanov was just one of those types of guys that he doesn't throw no type of volume in the UFC. All he does is have heart and cardio. And he was actually landing pretty good damaging combinations on Sergey in that fight. And I actually had Sergey in the parlay, and I was really concerned in the sense that Blagoy Ivanov never did that in his whole entire career. He was just one of those guys that would take you down, lay you up against the cage, just hold on you for 15 minutes, and you wouldn't be able to do nothing, and he'll win the fight. And Sergey, he didn't do none of that against Sergey. He came out there like a bat out of hell and just was able to land plenty of punches on Sergey. And the other fight that was really concerning too was that Fernando Rodriguez fight that he won by split decision. I just wasn't really too high on it. Fernando was able to keep up against the cage for long periods of times in that fight. And if I'm not saying that, like, I'm not putting too much stock into Tyro's fortune power, but at plus 110, I think he could definitely hold Sergey against the cage for solidify probably 2 rounds and get this fight probably like 29-28. Like I said, I'm just fading Sergey in this spot and give me Tyro fortune money line.
Yeah, I think definitely not all 2 fights are created equal. So, I mean, it's this situation in a fight that has happened before. I think that Fortune could get to his wrestling. He can make this ugly. And I mean, if you look at it, if you were to sort of look at the odds of things happening, so a KO or a TKO versus a wrestler getting to his wrestling game and winning by decision or a late finish, what happens more frequently? Probably the decision and the late finishes via working somebody out. So, yeah, man, I like this spot. I think there's definitely some value there. It was something that I was sort of teasing with, and it'll sort of bring. Actually, we'll let Billy sort of chime in, then it'll bring me into my dog of the week as well too.
I'll bring up what I wrote for my breakdowns for Bellator 294 like over a year ago when the first time that the 2 fought. I said Sergey's an interesting heavyweight prospect, but has questionable cardio past the first round. He has very fast hands and decent takedown defense for about a round. Fortune's a very talented heavyweight, but struggles with fight IQ with a wrestling type of game plan. It's costly with the decision making. Sergey's a beatable prospect, but you can't really trust the fight IQ of Tyrell Fortune. And then what happened? Tyrell Fortune knocked him out in the first round. So I guess that didn't really live up to what I wrote up. But kind of a pass fight for me. I hear. I just don't think there's an edge, man. Tyrell Fortune should be the side, but with the even money scenario, I mean, I couldn't. It's not a fight I'm looking to bet, to be honest with you. So I can't give you an accurate read. I'm rooting for my man Slick.
If I were to give a suggestion on this one, maybe wait till right before the fight, because I think that you'll see some bettors that may jump in on this fight just to bet, and what they're going to end up doing is just looking at this fight happening before. This is what happened, and then you may get a little bit more of a better line just before the fight on Fortune. I think the wrestling actually could potentially win in this one. I like it as an angle. If I were to touch this fight, that's the way I would approach it. I think it's a dog or pass. But I'm actually going to jump into my dog of the week, and I like Anthony Ivy at plus 180 against Jaleel Willis. Jaleel, although he hasn't been taken down too much, and, I think that there'll be some cappers on him saying, he did well against Kyle Crutchmer, but Crutchmer didn't really invest in a wrestling game plan in that fight. Like, he got on the hips a little bit on the cage and whatever else, but he didn't really invest in trying to figure out the footwork and get inside. So, I mean, I think that the path to victory for Willis really is he's got to utilize that boxing properly. He's got to down block. He's got to be able to throw, jabs to the chest. He's got to be able to land and just keep that control with the jab in order to keep the boxing at bay. The wrestling at bay. My apologies. But Anthony Ivy's a little bit relentless when it comes down to the takedowns, and he's been doing that at least a lot more frequently. He's been getting guys to the ground pretty frequent, and then also even attacking submissions. He's pretty aggressive, so it's not like he's just taking you down and not scoring. So even if he doesn't get the submission, that still counts as points. I just think there's value on the dog. I think that wrestling could potentially prevail in this one the same way you see value in fortune. So I think that he could get it on the hip to Jaleel. I don't think Jaleel's really been challenged in that realm in a while. And I think that, him not getting taken down more recently is more inflated into the fact that he hasn't been challenged in that realm. So I think you're going to see Ivy go to the wrestling, and I'll take that at plus money. I'll say, I like those wrestling mismatches scenarios. I think he's going to be able to get in the hips of Jaleel Willis and work it.
I got to fight back, bro. I'm going to tell you, man.
I know. I know you will.
I love you. You're my boy, but this is not what you want to do. Let's bring you back to why are we here? What happened? What's the path line? What's the timeline for these fighters? My man Jaleel Willis took a fight with Bellator for Cedric Doumbé, a fight where they basically told him, bro, can you take this fight for us? Can we use your record? You're going to lose. Can you make the fight interesting? He said, I got you, bro. And damn, did he make that fight interesting for like the press conference lead up, da-da-da-da-da. They owe him one. What screams more for promotion than giving you back one? We're going to give you a prelim fight that has nothing to do with the playoffs in your hometown in front of your friends, family, and gym. You don't even have to travel outside your backyard. To walk inside your backyard, fight in your hometown after the shit that he probably had to go through in Paris. Bro, he walked inside a press conference. This is a co-main event. They said, fuck the main event. You guys aren't even in the press conference. The press conference is for the co-main. And he just got booed by an arena full of thousands of people. And he was starting to get so bad because, like, I guess as like a fellow black brother, when you're in a professional statement or a professional environment and you start saying that tells me they're getting under your skin a little bit here. He was like,
that will be edited out. That will be edited out on the Donttap podcast.
There's no other way to say it, man. They got into his head the last one, and I couldn't disagree with you anymore. Jaleel Willis is a wrestler. He is not a striker. It's the exact opposite. He's a historical crowd sniffer. He wants to wrestle. Everyone in the gym that talks about him, like Anthony Pettis and shit like that, they be talking about his wrestling acclimates. Former collegiate wrestler. I like Jaleel Willis here on the early prelims. I'm on the exact opposite end. You got to ride with the dude that just went overseas, the fight, the big dude that they're trying to promote, probably the biggest star that they're trying to promote, that they're having problems matchmaking with because people don't want to sign the contract. And now you're giving them a fight that has nothing to do with the theme of the card, and it's the first fight of the night, and it's in front of your hometown friends and family. You got to ride with Jaleel Willis in this one. And
now I know you love the narrative, and I love going back and forth with you on stuff. And I get the whole setup fight thing. I didn't realize the hometown thing. So that's some ignorance on my part, 1,000%. But that's why we have the podcast for. However, I'm going to tell you honestly, someone could be a wrestler. Their teammates can talk about them being a wrestler. But when you're inside and you're you're pushing guys up against the fence, but you're still sticking on boxing and trying to stick on the outside to be a striker, and you sort of falling in love with your striking, I don't care about your wrestling accolades in that situation. I get the narrative side of things, but here's what I do love. And here's and I love that you sort of put me in check. Maybe the plus 180 isn't as valuable as I did see. But what's going to happen now is it's still a stylistic matchup I do like. I think no matter if you are a solid wrestler or not, I see him being able to get taken down in the situation by Ivy. And in that situation, I'm probably going to get plus 220, plus 240, because most people are going to be on the narrative that you're talking about. So I'm with it. Although I think most people, educated-wise, probably should go on the Billy side of things with this one. But I will take the value on the stylistic matchup that I thought I saw in tape. And what I'll run with is, if it'll be plus 220, plus 240, I will take it all the way to the bank.
I don't know, man. This is one.
Hey, you punked me last week with Patty Pimbley, and that was one where I thought I saw a stylistic change.
Like, You lose 5 fights straight fights in a row. Well, you lose 2 fights in a row, you get cut from the UFC. Then you lose your first 3 fights on the regional scene. Granted, some of those wins ended up aging a little bit better with the Fel Hafez split decision in Fury FC, which was a razor thin fight. And then you just start fighting bums on the regional scene, bro. 12-8, 11-5, 14-13, 12-3, 11-6, and then you fight a 5-0 guy. Like, bro, you're not fighting anybody, bro. For real, you're really not fighting anybody. The level of competition in the last 3 fights, bro, aren't even close, bro. Ramazan Khamagomedov is another one, bro. My man became the fucking champion of the division. They said, Jaleel Willis, go fight him. Cedric Doumbé, we're trying to make him a champion. Go fight him. Kyle Kruchmer, this is a winnable fight for you. And what happens? He wins the fucking fight. Like, it seems like one of those spots where, like, bro, you're literally not setting him up for any shot of winning. And first round management said, bro, we got you, bro. This is a winnable fight.
It wouldn't be the Donttap podcast if we weren't on either ends of something pretty heavily. And really, honestly, although I'm getting back and forth with you on it, I'm not actually as so heavy and married to a PFL underdog on an early part of the card as I am. This is fun going back and forth. And I don't know if there's anything left to really combat on this one back and forth, but Slick, either say I have value on what I'm saying or just pile on Cal on this one.
I mean, I think there is some value on Ivy for the simple fact that he could get like maybe threaten with some submissions and get the fight going his way with the wrestling. But honestly, man, I do see a path to victory for Jaleel Willis. Like, this is just one of those types of fights that if I was to bet it, maybe take a chance on Ivy, but I'll probably just stay away from it. Like Billy said, there is it's just wrestler versus wrestler, and Jaleel is. The one thing I really like about him is that he stays a hold of you for longer periods of time than what you really like to, and that's one thing that I think that could deter Anthony Ivy from getting into his own wrestling boots and just maybe Jaleel Willis could wear on him. But this is just a fight that I'll definitely be betting the over on if I get a chance on. So I'll probably lean the over, but dog or pass for me, but leaning more towards just not betting it.
And you guys are literally talking me into maybe looking at a time prop or something else on this, just totally ripping it apart on me. But I'm okay with that. Sometimes you got to come in with a spot and be married to it. And other people got to dissect the shit out of it and make you realize maybe you drank a little bit too much. Not me, because I don't drink, but you know what I mean. Okay, so next we will come in with the next line. Slick, I think we'll go to you for your next play of the week.
Yeah, I mean, this is just going to be – I understand everybody and their mom's going to be on this side. But we got to stick to what's making us money. And I'm gonna look at the lines, and I'm going to go with probably – I'm going to go away from the round 1 prop and look at value. I think Dakota Ditcheva by KOs in rounds 2 or 3 is probably going to be like plus 350, plus 300. It was plus 480 her last fight because I bet it. But – I just think Jenna Bishop can at least last the round, man. I think her toughness and her durability can at least have her last the round. My one concern is that the one thing that Dakota Ditcheva does in this division that not a lot of girls even do in the UFC is the body work, man. She just throws the body shots, the knees to the body. And the one thing that I like about her is that when she see you hurt, she waits for your reaction. She doesn't just pounce on you. She waits for, like, if she hurts you to the body, she's going to wait for you to crumble or something. She's going to wait for you to do something for her to really attack you. And that's one thing that a lot of people don't do. Like, a lot of people see somebody hurt and they'll overthrow a right hand and they end up falling into a clinch or falling into a takedown or something. Dakota doesn't do any of that. So that'll probably be my one concern. But rounds 2 or 3 KO is going to be like plus 300. So I'm going to go with that for the Dakota Ditcheva fight.
I think Dakota's going to have to drag this into deeper waters because the way Jenna Bishop fights, it's a bad style. It's a good stylistic, but there's stuff that you can point out that she could slip up. Good stylistic meaning like, shit, this is definitely the way to hide her in the PFL. Would you rather have her fight Talia Santos or Liz Carmouche or Jenna Bishop? Like, she definitely got the easiest one of the draw in the matchup. So, like, that I kind of understand why she's minus 700. But from, like, an actual X's and O's standpoint, there's probably two ways this fight goes. Jenna Bishop probably shoots for a takedown. Dakota I can't say her last name. Dakota kind of shoves off the takedown and just starts landing a bunch of strikes up against the cage while Jenna Bishop is trying to clinch her up, and she ends up getting knocked out early. But there's the other side of the coin where if you told me the biggest difference between the two fighters in this matchup, bro, Jenna Bishop's ground game is just 10 times, not even close to Dakota's here. If Jenna Bishop can get this fight to the ground at any point or at any time, she can and she will look for the submission. Fought to a split decision in her last fight against a girl that's lined at minus 260 versus a girl that hasn't probably lost a fight in like a decade. I think the value side's on Jenna Bishop here at plus 500. It's one of those type of bets that you place in MMA that you probably know you're going to lose, but I'm not looking I've been big Dakota parlay type of guy, and I'm not throwing her in parlays this week. This isn't the best of this is a fight where we're going to see where her ground level is. Like all these girls that she's been fighting, like the girl Chelsea Hackett, she was supposed to wrestle her. She goes in her interview and goes, yeah, I'm going to strike with her. I'm going to show her that she hasn't fought anybody, and I'm going to throw a big right hand punch. Yeah, all right. Ends up getting knocked the fuck out in the first round, like in like 20 seconds. The fight wasn't even competitive. All these people that she's being matched up with, nobody is even, I would say, level one compared to like Jenna Bishop's ground game. Jenna Bishop has one of the best ground games in women's MMA, while everything else is still catching up to speed. But her ground game is legit. Her and Angie Hill, training partners, I like the work that she's getting in. The fight could play out very fucking close where they're like robbing Jenna Bishop on the judges' scorecards because Dakota didn't knock her out.
Yeah, this is just a spot, like I said, that all the value for me is on the second and third round KO. I'm not parlaying. I've never parlayed Ditcheva because at the end of the day, I see minus. You see minus. I see minus 1,000 on her right now. So I don't think she's parlayable. And the KO by itself is probably going to be like minus 250. It was minus 200 her last fight. So I can only imagine what it is going to be this fight. And I just think it's more value. If you can find plus money, KO rounds 2 or 3 at plus 2, 3, 400. I think it's definitely more value for that.
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I can see some of the value on Jenna Bishop to sort of scare off the minus 700 or minus 1,000 that it is now that it's crawled to. So you're definitely going to either search the props or maybe even look for like a double chance both sides, get crazy with a sub or KO on either side of the coin. I will point out one thing. I will cap the capper on this. Billy, you were a little bit in love with Jenna Bishop. Just much like I have my Canadian. One second. Hear me out. Just much like I have my bias a little bit with the Canadian guys, she is a little bit of that regional scene darling that every capper is excited that they were on early, right? And so she does have that value 100%, and she does have, and I will second what you said, she does have one of the better ground games as far as women's MMA that's out there 100%. As far as transitioning from the wrestling to
BJJ,
very
she's
good.
a world champion BJJ black belt, and like at like the IBFJ level, like that.
But she mixes in the wrestling really well too, and she transitions it to her BJJ really well as well too. So I will say that. And so there is value on her, but there is sort of that baked in narrative where it's like they almost like they hit her away with this matchup against Jenna Bishop just to sort of give her the victory, even if it might be a little bit of a, it stretches over or whatever else. But
the money line's plus 500. You're telling me a world champion black belt IBA, whatever the fuck that shit's called, BJJ black belt should be at plus 750, plus 800 to win by sub? Like that's for
it's a Tony Ferguson, Michael Chiesa Darce choke. That's what it is right now.
If that shit hits the ground,
we'll be talking about that one on the UFC card. But yeah,
I don't want to bite back, but that shit hits the ground, bro. It's gonna look like Patty Pimblett submitting Bobby Green in the first round, man.
We'll be talking about that. That's one of my plays of the week. I'm sure it'll be on the Darce, but it is sort of a win condition thing, right? So if it hits the ground, that potentially could happen. And I mean, if there's a crazy amount of value, you'd be stupid if you didn't sprinkle it, even if you were on the other side of it. So definitely we'll see how that plays out. I'm going to bring in a spot. I'm going to bring in someone who I sort of faded in a homer situation.
I'm glad you're bringing this up. I wanted to hear your.
This man fought Anthony Romero in his last fight, and I think Anthony Romero is, although he's had sort of a little bit of a bad run as of late, I think he is, a very high level grappler, a high level wrestler who is able to sort of keep you off of him. He is a very cerebral striker, but the one thing that you saw out of Costio in the last fight, he pushed a pace that sort of ended up, breaking the situation in the third round last fight. I'm a huge fan of Romero, and I think that he's a sort of a gauge in the sense that we see that Castillo really is that good. The guy, if you look at him right now, inside the distance is going to be my play. He's on a 9-fight win streak, 27 wins, 7 of them come by KO. He is traditionally a grappler first, so he's 13 by submission, and then 7 by decision. But I just think in this matchup against Sanders, so I just think that this is an inside the distance to play. I think that he's even parlayable and maybe my parlay piece, depending on how we look at the end of this. But I just think that although his striking is a little bit awkward, he presents enough pressure. He has enough pop in his punches. He presses you up against, he can back you up against the cage. And where that creates a problem is we saw that with Bilal Muhammad over the weekend. As soon as you get close enough, if you can close the distance with your striking, back someone on the cage, he can at least win a decision where he's mixing up the wrestling and grappling with some striking and landing big moments. He's got both things, the grappling and the power moments on the feet. So I just think that there's value there. He really, right now, he's minus 240 right now. It's probably going to be a line that gets a little bit steamed. That's why I probably will look at the inside the distance prop and see if there's any value there, or I may have to attack rounds, or we'll see how it works out. I just think he's a piece this week. If you can get in early and get him as a parlay piece, I think this is sort of he's just going to light him up. I think he's going to light him up and land some big shots on the feet and end up on his back at some point. So give me Castillo. I think there's value. We'll see what the sub's worth, but at minus 240, I will make him a parlay piece if that's going to be the play there.
I'm kind of glad you're talking me into a little bit, because I was looking at that fight, because there's 2 buckets I feel like as an MMA capper that you kind of have to throw fights into. Like, you have to talk about the market of the fight, and then you have to talk about like the actual X's and O's of it. And the market of this one is the red flag for me of, like, in MMA, the bookies of recent have been doing this in the last year and a half, 2 years, where they fuck up a price tag where somebody's priced as a huge underdog. They win their first fight in this promotion or something like that. And then they're like, oh, we got hit with a plus 300 ticket. Oh, shit, we need to change the price tag. We're not trying to get hit again. We'll actually Elvis Brenner is a prime example of that. Remember Elvis Brenner, his first 2 UFC fights. We're just going to line them back-to-back, huge underdog odds, cashes both, and then you start seeing minus 300s, minus 250s, biggest favorite on the card, and you're like, Elvis Brenner, biggest favorite on the card. I get it. Like, he should probably win, but, like, he shouldn't be the biggest favorite of the card. And it's not that drastic, but minus 240, this could easily be fight of the night or performance of the night. It's up to Sergio Cassius how he kind of wants to fight it. This could be one version of this fight where he just runs through this dude, and we don't really know if this dude's really that good or not, or this turns into a fucking barn burner and I want no type of money into it because it has nothing to do with the standings. There's no hometown fighter. One fighter's from the fucking Alaska regional scene. So right off of that alone, Cal is selling me. We fade Alaska FC fighters, not named fucking Euros.
1,000%. You got to fade Alaska FC. I did want one correction though. Let me say one thing to correct it. He only actually does have 1 loss via submission. So that is a correction. When I was going through the numbers, I was scanning through on stuff. But he still does give up his neck quite a bit. And the reality of the fact is the level of competition, it isn't even like it's not close.
The losses are fine though. The losses are fine. Losses actually. Yeah,
100%. Luis Pena, yeah, sure. Decision, yeah, 100%. But if you look at it like this, here's the red flag though. His wins are in the first round, second round, wins by KO at Aries Fighting in lower level talent. And that is a huge red flag when you got a guy who can bring a full rounded game. I think Castillo here definitely the side. And I think you're sort of when you're going with there's a little bit of the bookies, they don't know how to approach this and they maybe line it the way they did. Definitely see what you're saying. Slick, take it away.
Yeah, I mean, outside of Goltsov, I honestly think Castillo is probably my most lock of the night, honestly. Like, I just think, like you say, he's going to come in here with a more dangerous game plan. And that's one thing that I know is going to deter Sanders, man. I think Sergio's just going to come in here, balls to the wall, not giving a fuck. And we've seen him in his last fight, man. Last fight, he was what, like a plus 400 underdog, and he paid every single price. I mean, he made everybody that had Anthony Romero in their parlays pay, man. And Romero was a tough guy, man. He was one of those guys that had a lot of hype behind him. And Sergio Castillo was just one of those guys that he was a bigger dog in that fight. So I'm definitely not fading Castillo in this spot. I think he could definitely get the finish on the feet. Or like you said, man, Sanders does leave his neck open in those transitions. He could just get the neck to get something else. He has plenty of different types of subs, knee bars, rear naked chokes. He's just one of those unorthodox guys like Edgar Chavez in the UFC. Like he has the knockouts, he has the subs. Anywhere this fight goes, he's dangerous. So I'm definitely going Castillo. The thing about him, I'm gonna just lay the money line in the parlay because for some reason I think the inside the distance is probably gonna be damn near his money line, probably like minus 180, 200 around there. So I'm definitely just gonna probably hammer him and Goltsov or him and somebody else in a parlay.
Yeah, and you're definitely that is the one thing that might not have value, just going inside the distance. And I started looking at the sub. That was the initial thing I was looking at. So I may have to look at round props or whatever way we can approach this to try to get value out of it, whether it's 1 and 2 or whatever it might be. I just think he does finish this inside the distance, but yeah, definitely a parlay piece and likely will be my piece that I'm going to add to. Goltsov was another one I was looking at. You're likely going to bring that to the table. I'll probably bring Castillo to the table as a piece later on too. So I think Billy, your next spot, would you be your last spot? You want to bring that to the table?
Yeah, my last spot to the table here. Yeah, Bill's getting greasy. It's PFL season, Nashville, Tennessee. First fight of the night we are going to here. We backed the hometown fighter in the second fight of the night, and we're fading the hometown fighter in the first fight of the night here in Kevin Pease. And the only reason why I feel like he's getting this step up a little bit is because of the situational scenario. Usually you see Bellator and PFL and these type of cards, they usually put a couple of hometown fighters on the first couple fights of the night, regardless of like where their level of competition is at. And this is a levels check fight. You might not know Nick Meck, but he's the king black cat for a reason. And you know what, Jim? I don't even have to explain too much from you. He's a wrestler from Trey Ogden's gym. You already know exactly what the fuck you about to get from him. A good game plan, a solid 15-minute cardio, and he's going to go out here and wrestle. And I definitely think the finish is in the cards, but I'm not going to go that crazy because the level of competitions is still not the best, but I like the loss against JP St. Louis. That was his only CFFC fight, and JP St. Louis is he is of a certain level. Like we're going to see him in the UFC eventually down the line in his career. But as I digress a little bit here, I love the spot here. First fight of the night, dog of the night here, Nick Meck on the money line. Wrong fighter favored. This is probably my most confident dog pick of the week. Kevin Pease minus 185 at a 5-0 record. You name the fucking people that he's fought. He ain't fight nobody. He's only getting that amount of juice because he's the hometown guy. And I like Nick Meck a lot here in this spot. I mean, he's just going to wrestle him, bro. He's just going to show him a nice little vet lesson. He's got a little bit more edge in the regional scene and experience. I like the coaching. You know, every fighter that fights from Trey Ogden's gym, they all usually fight the same exact way. And I kind of feel like I know what I'm getting versus the dude that's favored and nobody really knows anything about him besides he's a hometown fighter. And it's not the Jaleel Willis angle where like he's back in his hometown. It's like, nah, like he probably hasn't fought anywhere outside of like the South regional scene. So I like Nick Meck a lot this weekend. Plus 155 money line.
Good dog play. I mean, Nick Meck, if he can get to the wrestling and that's what he does and gets on top, he actually attacks submissions as well too from the top. Couple fights ending in Kimura, so he'll work on key locks and he's aggressive in that way, so he'll score points in that way even in the wrestling. Sometimes guys can take you down, but they don't necessarily get anything done. How Nurmagomedov's going to look against Corey Sandhagen and not get anything done in the wrestling in the upcoming fight. But in this one, I think that you're definitely right. I think Meck could definitely attack some submissions from the top as well too, create some problems with some elbows. He's a little bit more aggressive that way. So I see value on it at plus 155, plus 140 right now. Two books have it. It may get a little bit closer coming to fight night. I think that one might be a little bit closer. So if you hear this early and get in on an early line, jump on it, slick, take it away.
Yeah, I'm actually on Meck myself, man. I think, like you said, the price is just wrong in this spot. Peace just hasn't fought. Like his combined record of opponents outside of this is 8-7. So that just goes to show he fought two guys that were damn near making their debuts in the promotion. So I'm not really too high on him. Like you guys always say, this is just a levels check for me. Mac definitely has fought at least more guys with more fights on their records. He actually beat a guy, Kevin, last fight, 7-3 record, nice knee. I think it's just a good spot for him to. And the one thing that I know about him is that he's more dangerous when it comes to the unorthodox strikings, like the knees, like the well, it's in PFL, so he can't use elbows no more and stuff like that. So he'll probably not use that. And I just think Peace is just one of those guys that he looks for submissions when he's on top, but I just don't know if he's gonna be on top a lot in this fight. Like he looks for subs that like you're trained, like you're going slowly to achieve like the arm triangles, the rear naked chokes. I just really don't see Mac giving him any of that. He's gonna make him work on the ground. He'll probably try to get back on the feet. And if this fight does get into deeper waters, I think I could trust Mac way more than I trust Kevin Peace in that third round. So give me Mac in this spot at plus. I actually see him at plus 180. So at the end of the day, if I could get him at like plus 200 before fight night, I'm definitely put. I was thinking about making him like a half unit play, but if I get more than 200, I'm making him a 1 unit play. Fuck it.
Yeah, I would wait until the date, probably right after weigh-ins. You see the lines come in a little bit on the hometown fighters, and you'll probably see the market go in the direction of Kevin Pease. But the value side's definitely Nick Mack when it comes to the tape.
So we agree on Liz Carmouche's dog at plus 200, seeing the value there. We agree on Mech as far as the value, at whether it's plus 140 to plus 180, and we'll see where that line does move. One of my plays gets blown out of the water, Anthony Ivy. If you see something like that happen, you might just want to stay off it altogether, because there is something I saw, obviously, but I did get blown out of the water pretty hard by these two, even though you were trying to be nice about it, Slick. I appreciate that. But if we look at it, Sergio, a pretty heavy spot for us as well, too. I think that's a parlay piece. And we have Goltsov, obviously, by KO, but trying to figure out how to do that. Definitely one thing we want to look at. And Dakota, seeing value in Bishop, maybe dragging it over, and or even seeing if there's only a value prop play, right? Like if there's a crazy amount of value on a win condition by Bishop, which is her win condition is going to be like a sub on the ground, maybe sprinkle that as well too.
Dakota by fucking robbery unanimous decision, if that makes sense. If you guys have been in the MMA game for a long time, you know sometimes they don't want the robbery decision to look like a split, and that it would be like unanimous decision. You're like, nigga, what the fuck is you looking at? You're like, what? How is that not a split? That's exactly how the Dakota fight's gonna go. She's gonna win like 29-28 on all three judges' scorecards. We're gonna be like, what the fuck?
She's been dominating. It's bound to happen that she has a decision fight that's coming up. So, I mean, as she goes up higher and higher in the rankings, you can't dispute, the grappling and wrestling from Jenna Bishop being a BJJ. You said, what level black belt is she?
World class.
World class, yeah.
Like that means when I mean world class, it's not like your fucking pops that runs the jiu-jitsu jaunt down the street and he's giving you out like that kid from the Contender Series last year. No, this is like one where like you.
I mean, you're literally degrading Tom Aspinall, who just starched. I mean,
yeah,
so,
like
you know what I mean? His dad's garage getting black belts.
You're fucking the black belts like Renzo Gracie. Like they're just not handing out the black belts.
I'm messing with you. I know. I see it. Okay, so let's build that parlay then. We got Casio for me, Slick.
Give me Goltsov. I like Goltsov in that spot.
And then Billy, what about you?
I'm gonna go chalk donkey, best play of the week. Lay the law down, Cody Law and Zachary Hicks. We didn't talk about that fight, but Cody Law making his PFL promotional debut. He had to talk about heights of heights. And then Bellator, every Bellator fighter runs into this, unfortunately. Horrible promotion that promotes fighters. And they didn't promote him the right way. He took on some harder fights. He said, fuck it. I'll fight harder fights and try to promote myself. And damn, boy, took a couple losses because of it. But this is the comeback. This is the comeback story. This is Cody Law's in the featherweight division. He's fighting Brandon Law for it next season. You know why? Because he's about to get it all back. He's laying down the law. Whatever you want to do with it, it's probably we won't get props on it. So that's why I couldn't really bring it up as a topic. But Cody Law is going to get a whatever spectacular wrestling finish looks like. Like he ain't going to be no viral knockout that you're going to see on ESPN, but it's going to be a nice little either ground and pound knockout or a rear naked sub, and he's going to get that final finish to get that PFL.
He's gonna be on top of the guy for like 3 minutes and then finally get a KO.
Yeah, that's exactly how it's gonna go. But if PFL is, if like how they probably have like meetings where like they're like kind of like seeing what fighters each promotion wants, and if the PFL wants Cody Law for 145, I see the path, I see the vision, and I see the tickets being sold next season when he's in there fighting a guy like fucking maybe even Paul Hughes or some shit like that. Like, there's a lot of shit that you could do with Cody Law and put him in some fun fights if he is able to win this showcase fight and get put in the rankings next season.
Just trying to work out what the actual parlay would be. So it's minus 700 plus minus 425 and a minus 240. Obviously, it's speculative because not all the books are out yet. I'm literally actually putting it into ChatGPT trying to figure it out, but it came out with the wrong number. So I'm trying to work it again with the right questions. But either way, if we don't get it on the show, we'll actually put it out in a reel for the podcast. I think that's something that we can be able to do. So we have a solid parlay. I mean, we have a situation where I felt strongly about, a wrestling dog, but we get talked off that situation, which is great. And there's value in some of these dogs that are barking on a PFL card. And I mean, usually you get looking at just sort of chalk parlays and prop spots. But I think there's some value in some of these dogs. So I think that we've sort of dissected those spots definitely well. Any other notes you guys want to add before we shove off?
I'm actually pretty touched up on everything, like all the spots that we like. So not going to be the buttons on something that I really don't like.
Yeah, there's. I mean, we even hit you guys with the 2 showcase fights to start off the card. To put some money in your pocket. Make sure you guys comment down below. What showcase fight are you most excited to see? Because Alexei Pregande is also coming back around, and he won the I keep on wanting to say Dana White looking for a fight, but it's not the UFC. The PFL Challenger Series. He was like the big face from that series. Man, you talk about levels, man. He can fucking knock your lights out with a head kick, arm punch, and now he has a ground game. I'm high on Alexei Pregande long term as like a potential prospect, regardless of what promotion he goes to.
Nothing but value. I think that first fight of the night is where probably some of the best value that we saw, because I was thinking Greece right away, and then the way you guys broke those down, I mean, people have to see value in that, and I think that a lot of the MMA gamblers will appreciate that. But for Billy Briz of Pub Sports Radio, for Slick Montana of the Darce Podcast, check them out as well too. Some great picks and different angles. I am Callum McGregor, tuning to the Donttap Podcast.
And we'll break it all